This video is sponsored by Warlord Games. Well, howdy folks. You got a new box set that needs painting up? Not got much time in the day to do it? Well, whether you're looking for techniques to speed up that painting or you just want to get on the tabletop as soon as you possibly can so you can do battle with your mates, this video has you covered. I'm Peachy and this is Peachy Tips. You may be looking at me thinking, there's something different about you, Peachy. I'm like, nope, same setup as always. Got my tea, got my biscuits. It's nothing different, it's fine. Just carry on, let's do some painting. So you may or may not know this about me, you're probably not from the channel, but I do really like World War II content. Just World War II stuff in general. As a kid, I used to love watching World War II action films. I used to collect loads of Airfix, World War II figures, vehicles, tanks, you name it. I loved it, and I still do. I've just not done much on the channel. And Warlord, obviously, have asked to sponsor a video with their new Bolt Action 3 set that's coming out, or Bolt Action 3rd edition, as it is rightly called. And I jumped at the chance because it felt right, and I really want to get my teeth stuck into some World War II stuff. Not just for the channel, but just for me as well. So it was the perfect opportunity to do it. And it is a great looking set because, and I'll touch on this in a bit, but there are certain scenes from a TV show called Band of Brothers. If you've not seen that, check it out. Very, very good TV show. And it gave me some good nostalgic hits of watching some of those episodes. And I was like, I want to recreate that. I want to recreate Foy and the Ardennes. So that really was the big part of this video, is just painting some cool US and German troops in the Ardennes, duking out in the snow. So what is it, Peachy, about World War II that you like or floats your boat? So obviously, as a young kid, I used to watch those films all the time with my family. Black and white ones, colour ones, doesn't matter. It was a family affair to sit around the TV and watch World War II movies. Very heroic stuff as well. So as a young kid growing up, very impressionable. But from a gaming point of view and a collecting point of view, obviously you got World War I, which was moving from old school tactics, like almost Napoleonic tactics, but they're getting like more modernised weaponry. So obviously, you know, horrific amounts of casualties are inflicted during that war because of those old school tactics with modern day weaponry. Whereas World War II, obviously they've adjusted that and it's become more squad based conflicts, lots of tanks, lots of airplanes, lots of big ships, and obviously getting into like not quite the camouflage, yes, but you know, appropriate colours that will hide you better in bushes and trees and grass than, like, you know, Napoleonics, etc. And also, as a kid growing up, a lot of my grandparents and great uncles and great aunts actually fought in the war or served in the war to some capacity, whether that was the Home Guard, the ATS, you know, manning the flak guns and stuff like that. So there was living experience being taught and explained to you about their experiences, because some of them would talk about it, some of them didn't. And that was fascinating as a child growing up. And obviously Airfix made all the figures, so there I was, you know, pew-pewing like my figures on the tabletop whilst Grandad's watching, looking at me going, oh, that's not how tactics work, Peachy. Obviously my Grandad didn't call me Peachy. That would be weird because he's also Peachy. But I guess the real love for me is the uniforms. I've always been a big fan of uniforms, which is why I collect all sorts of different ranges of miniatures, because they have lots of cool, interesting uniforms. Whereas the World War II stuff, although practical it is, I guess it's still that there's cultures and you can tell nations from the outfits. I mean, like, you know, you as a silhouette, you could tell an American from a Brit, you could tell a German from a Russian, which is incredible when you think about it. And obviously all the vehicles and stuff had their own identity. I loved seeing all these kits, and like just like from a distance, you'd like see a kit on the table. Like my dad would collect stuff with his mates, and I'd be like, oh, that's a Sherman. Oh, that's a Willys Jeep. Oh, cool. I don't know why, I love the British quad truck that pulls the 25-pounder. Don't know why. Don't know why, I just love the shape of it. It's been my favourite vehicle of World War II since I was a child, and I can't explain why. It just looks cool. I'm obviously going to put a picture up so you can see it, and you'll be like, Peachy, it's just a brick with wheels. Also love Jeeps, big fan of Jeeps. And I did start collecting stuff a while back. I had two forces. I had some Soviets, mostly because my mates had already taken like the British and the US. I was like, okay, I'll do the Russians. And then I decided, because I like to have two forces so people can play against each other, I went for some Fallschirmjager. Now, I have a big love for Paratroopers. And I don't know why. It's a bit like the love for the quad truck. Don't know why I love that. I just do. But there's something about Paratroopers. Initially, it was the Red Devils, the British, Arnhem, Operation Market Garden. Then, of course, Band of Brothers came out during my 20s. And that was super awesome to watch. And I fell in love with, obviously, the US paratroopers in all their forms. I did have a set of American paratroopers when I was much younger. Some Rebel ones, I think they were. And they had like some guys called Pathfinders, which had like mohawks and stuff like that. They were mega. So I was like, oh, I want some of those. But yes, the paratrooper element is cool. And I decided I wanted to collect because I needed some adversaries to fight against the Soviets. I was like, oh, I'll do some Fallschirmjager because I quite like the look of them. And I think that's my favourite German unit, is the Fallschirmjager. I just think the uniforms look pretty. They're Luftwaffe based, so they're Air Force related, a bit like most of the airborne stuff. But I think it's the camo smocks that they have, and that kind of nice sort of bluey grey Air Force kind of like helmet and trousers. The camo pattern's really interesting as well. And if you look at like the British, those paratroopers, there's almost similarities between the smock and some of the helmet designs and stuff like that, which is really interesting. And then of course their outfits would develop and change as the war develops. So depending on which theatre they're in, so if you take them fighting the British in Italy, they're like Monte Cassino, obviously they'll have like more appropriate outfits for that. But I just prefer the early war stuff. I just think it looks cool, and that's what I did my Fallschirmjager as. But then time has moved on, and I don't know where those collections are. I may have passed them on to some kids, cousins, nieces, nephews. But yeah, it's high time I did some World War II content and some stuff for my own collections. Mostly so I can play my mates because they've been whinging at me that I don't have any World War II stuff. I've got plenty of things around the house. I've got the set there, which is Gentleman's War. So I could do like SAS versus the Africa Corps. I've got some Canadians up there. I've got some British paratroopers. I've got a quad truck. So there's no excuse not to do that. So I've got a few things around. But Warlord asked me to do a video on the new set. And at first I was like, oh, I'm not really interested in like doing Germans and Americans right now. I want to do some British, and maybe I'll do some Fallschirmjager. And it wasn't until I saw the models like, Fallschirmjager in winter. Well, that's different. Oh, Americans in greatcoats. Well, they're quite cool. Oh, they look like, oh, that's that scene from like Band of Brothers when they're in the Ardennes, like Foy and stuff like that. So that was the hook for me, really, was, yeah, you could recreate your favourite scene from TV, Peach. I was like, cool, I'm going to do that. Now, initially when I was building the things, I was like, yeah, cool plastic. I love building plastic figures. They've got some plastic Americans, they've got some plastic Germans. But looking at the sprues, there's just so much stuff on them. And, you know, I've been looking through the rules to build up my units. So, like, I'm going to fight the US, I'm going to do a couple of squads of 6, pick out the weapons. Obviously, I need some Garans in there, maybe have the odd SMG for my NCO, get myself some BARs as well. And then just mix it up a bit. I could do like a bazooka team, I could do like a sniper team, and I would need, obviously, my leader in there, my command. You can have like a couple of people. I'm just going to stick one with him, maybe a trusty sergeant and stuff like that. And then looking at the German stuff, so you got your Fallschirmjager set, which I obviously it didn't occur to me that obviously, yes, they fought against the Fallschirmjager quite a lot. Initially they were paratroopers, but then they just got used a lot just as ground troops during the later stages of the war because, well, they needed the men. So again, being a fan of paratroopers, I was like, I know these Americans I can pretty much use as anything really. I'm going to treat them as airborne. I'm using the airborne list because the beauty of these American troopers is they have great coats on and there is no insignia and no sort of like particular uniform. They've all got great coats. I'm pretty certain that's standard issue great coat. So I was like, I could do them as paratroopers. I could at some point change that around and do them as rangers. I could do them as just standard US infantry. I could do them as what I want. And yeah, so I was super keen building those, but I did it with an airborne theme in mind, looking at the unit building of the airborne stuff. Got them built, happy with that. Got a couple of squads, got a couple of like small teams in there, like the bazooka team, the sniper team, and of course the command. So super excited with those. And then built the Fallschirmjager, and again, they have like different options of building. So I got 18 figures there as well. So I was like, I'm going to do a couple of squads of 8. So they're a little bit larger because you can have like slightly larger squads than you could with the US. So yeah, I just did 2 squads of 8 and then a leader with his buddy, whoever that is, probably like some faithful sergeant or NCO that has survived and, you know, worked with him all through different campaigns and this, that and the other. So I had my forces in mind. I knew what I was going to do. So I started getting them all built up. And there was a there was a lot of fun building these. Normally, you know, when you're building models, there is a couple of like elements that like, oh, that's not fitting together very well, or this, that, and the other. But these kits went together really well. Even like when you got like the two joins, so like like one arm holding the rifle and the other arm cupping it, but you need a separate arm to connect. They just joined together really well. I was really impressed by those. I need to get more because I really enjoy building them, and I've got grandiose plans to do more stuff. That doesn't all involve World War II. It might involve some weird Wolfenstein-esque Conflict 47 related content as well. So plans are afoot. But yes, my inspiration for the video, certainly the paint guide, was to keep it to the Ardennes, Foy, Band of Brothers, that episode or episodes where they're there, and pay homage to that moment in history as well. Because those guys were surrounded, it was tough. Obviously, if you've watched the TV show, you know that. So first up, I am going to paint the Americans. I was really excited when I did my test model because I've done some little cool hacks and techniques for these. You can get this unit painted pretty quickly. I managed to get my 18 figures that I've got done within the space of like 5-6 hours. Again, I've been using an undercoat spray here to speed the process along. You would think, well, there's a lot of brown on there, because when I was looking at these stuff on the website, it's like they've got brown overcoats. I was doing a lot of research on like, well, Google, looking through my books, like my colour plates in my uniform books and stuff like that. And like some look brownish, some look khaki. I was like, I could mix up. I was like, I'm not too much of a fan of that warm brown. I think it looks too comical. So I'm going to go try and keep to like a khaki tone, because when I was watching Band of Brothers, it looked more like a khaki or like a khaki olivey kind of drab colour. So I went with that. So yeah, sprayed them green. I used some clever use of dry brushes and washes. So let's go on to painting some Americans, and these are my American Airborne. Let's do it. So the first thing we need to do is undercoat our models, and for my Americans I'm going to be using a olive green. The first step after spraying is going to be getting some hardened leather. And what I'm going to be doing here is applying that all over the greatcoat, overcoat, winter coat, whatever you want to call it. I could be quite messy here because I've got like olive green, which is a nice paint, so if I'm making a mistake, I can tidy back up with that. But it's just a matter of working your way around. Your aim in here is to try and get in the recesses as well as change the tone of that green. So having that green undercoat will change the tone of this as well. So when it dries, you'll see. So yeah, go around, pick out things like the gaiters. And of course, don't forget to soak up any excess because it will pool at the bottom. That is absolutely fine. That's normal. So just be mindful and just work your way around checking that. Next is to move around and paint all that wood furniture on the weaponry. So whether that's the Garand, the Tommy gun, or the BAR, you're just working your way around. I tend to coat over the entire thing, and then I can always add like the gunmetal later on. So it's just a lot easier because then bits you're not too sure about, like, oh, is this bit wood, is that bit wood, you can just paint the whole thing and then just check reference later. And then only tidying up, just get some of that olive green and just work your way around. So any straps that may have got a little bit of hardened leather on, or if you got a bit on the gloves or the trousers or straps or whatever, then yeah, go around, pick those out. Then I'm going to get some necrotic flesh, and what I'm going to do is do a little dry brush over the overcoat. I'm also going to use it on things like the gloves and where the trousers are as well, but the idea really is to make that overcoat look a bit rough and a bit weathered. It's quite a heavy woolly kind of texture as well, so it's fine to have that kind of texture going in there. Now the boots are traditionally brown, at least from what I can tell. When I did my test model, it just looked a bit weird, and I know it's historically correct and all that, but I'm not bothered by that. I think black grounded better on the snow, so I dig black. And then for the gunmetal, I'm just going to get some of that black, mix it with some gunmetal, and then pick out any metal bits. Now I did get a bit carried away and went into historical mode and started painting them like muskets. Check your reference before you do that. I can easily tidy back up that later on with some brown anyway. But yes, don't do a peach and start treating it like a musket. We're going to go around any other guns, so like the submachine guns, the BARs, or whatever, just pick those out. And then it's a matter of moving on to the flesh. Here I'm using Paratrooper Tan, an aptly named colour for these troops. I didn't just use it because it was called that, honest. And then use some brown to pick out the cigar. There's a few guys with cigars. I really like this burnt moss colour as well. It seemed to be like almost, I've tried different greens, but I really like the end effect of the burnt moss. Just seemed to fit perfectly for the helmet colour. Again, to work underneath where the helmet is, try not to get those straps. If you do, you can tie it back up. And then it's a matter of getting some strong tone and applying that all over. I have slightly thinned this down, so it's a couple of paintbrushes of water as well. Or you can use the mediums that you get. A little bit of thumb work there, doing a little bit of highlight on the helmet. And then if you feel it's necessary on the cloak, if it's lost some of that highlights, you can always, instead of doing this before you do the wash, do it after. I like to do a couple of coats, build one before, one after, because you get a bit more definition that way, a bit more gradient. Alternatively, you can do some highlighting. But before we do that, and move on to the next steps. Just do some tidying up. So pick out any colours that may have got a bit messy here and there, certainly on the scarf and the gloves. So any straps, pouches or whatever, and of course don't forget the trousers, because well, you might have got something on those. It does happen. And having that wash underneath does darken down a bit, so using the olive green as a second coat really adds to that highlight. Then the next step stage, so if you want to add a little bit of love to your models, whether that's for sergeants, officers, whatever, I'm just going to get some Tundra Taupe on that great coat. Basically, don't do the dry brush if you don't want to. I mean, you can add it to the dry brush, gives it a bit of a roughness, that dry brush does. But this is just to highlight any folds in the cloth. It's a nice kind of tone that just works really well, that hardened leather over the green. Again, don't forget to do the gaiters, putties. Always do like some little jaggedy highlights if you wanted to make it look a bit worn and battered. And I don't know why, but my palette seems to keep making little images of animals. I've got a rabbit and a guinea pig there. Well, I'll turn that into a cow now, I think. No, that's a cow. Let's move on to some extra highlights. I'm going to get some prairie ochre on those sleeves. Well, just the folds of the cloth. Yeah, that's a really nice tone that just works really well, that great coat colour. So again, just work your way around. Again, great for officers, NCOs, or if you just want the entire unit to look like this, that also is fine. I didn't bother going this far with my own troops, but I thought I'd do it as a demonstration here as well. You can see some jaggedy highlights there, so it looks a bit rough and, well, seen some service in war, obviously. They have been hanging around in the snow forest for a while. And then tie up any skin, so extremities, nose, cheeks, chin, jaw, lips if you've got them, if you can see them. And then any extra highlights using some amber skin. I just kept that to the cheeks and the nose, really. And then for any cigars that are a light, a little bit of an orangey red and a bit of an orange. That's all you really need. And then, of course, if you've got any brass buttons, these overcoats have a lot. This one's only got a couple that you can see. It's just a nice little look. And then for the wood furniture, again, you can. I didn't do this with my troops, but the option is here, just to pick out some of the highlights. And if you have made mistakes and painted them like muskets, you can tidy up at this point as well. But it just looks really nice. Again, move on to other things like the Tommy gun, BAR, and then highlight the gloves with some necrotic flesh. This is the same colour I used as the dry brush. And drop some black into the eyes. And my very favourite part is to get some sponge, whether that's figure case sponge or whatever, blister pack sponge, roll it into a little sleeve, get some Brigade Grey, dab it off like a dry brush, and then just work your way around. Start on the base of the overcoat first. This is where like a lot of snow's going to clump. So I did a little bit of like looking at like how snow attaches itself to, well, if you watch Band of Brothers, you'll see it. But yeah, it just looks really nice. Really like the effect. So I worked my way around, did it on like the shoulders as well. So it could still be snowing, or it could have just collected there because it's quite cold. It's not a chance to thaw out. Do it on the helmet as well. So you could almost imagine that it's just got a bit of a snowfall going on whilst they're in mid-battle. Right now it looks a bit weird and jarring with that green base, but when you get snow on that base, it just really adds an extra level to it. You could do it with a brush sleeve, or you could do it without, like I'm doing here. So whichever works for you.
So as you can see, they're quite straightforward when it comes from like a application of paint point of view. Just a bit of a dry brush, a couple of like speed paints, a couple of little colours here and there, blocking out, and then doing that all over wash. From a speed point of view, as I mentioned, you could just do the dry brushing, but if you want to add a bit of love to it, obviously those next steps with like some edge highlighting adds a little bit of extra love to it. But with my own stuff, the rest of the stuff, for the video, this one guy, I did those highlights on, but the actual squads I've done for myself, I didn't bother with that. I kept the wood just as it was with that speed paint. I dry brushed the overcoats and stuff like that. So the actual stuff in the photography is just the quick and easy method as opposed to the highlighted method. So it's entirely up to you. The options are there, but really enjoyed painting these. And I was quite proud of the sponge effect of the Brigade Grey, because I didn't use white. I went with like an off-white because I thought it'd look a little bit better. But sponging that on, after looking at lots of like pictures of like the black and white pictures are cool. You get an idea there's like lots of like snow caked around it, but there's some like pictures from like computer games, like Battlefield games and stuff, and also just, you know, other things like Band of Brothers. When you see that, they've got all the snow caked around it. But also I wanted to do it on the helmets and the shoulders because it looked like it's mid-snowing or it's collected there. And I was really proud of that sponging technique that did that. So yeah, big fan of that, and I'm gonna incorporate that into the Germans as well. Speaking of the Germans, let's crack on with painting some Fallschirmjager. Now, one thing I will throw in here as well, there are a couple of elements because they're quite eclectic, let's say, the scheme is. It's mostly white clothing with some of that Air Force Luftwaffe blue here and there for the helmets and trousers. But there's also, like, if you look at the packaging stuff and the stuff on the website for Warlord, they've got some camo bits here and there. I only wanted to incorporate on a couple of helmets, so it's like the helmet cover. I didn't want to do it anywhere else. I thought it would look a bit too weird for like a winter effect. But yeah, depending on which sort of, I guess, theatre, the camo pattern does change a bit. I just went with an artistic license because it is a small model. I'm blocking in the camo in this video, so it's just like little patches to give that representation of it. So if you're watching this again, that's not the correct camo pattern for the German paratroopers during that theatre. That's fine, you can do that. This was more a homage and a nod to camo because they're small and it was only a helmet. So do forgive me on that if you can find it in your heart. Right, let's paint some Fallschirmjager. Love saying that word. It's a great word. So over a white undercoat, what I'm going to do here is get some deep blue ocean, really thin it down, and I'm going to apply it to all the areas I want that kind of Luftwaffe blue. So walk your way around. Again, in some places you might want to do a second coat because if you depending on how light you make it, I did make it quite light. That's fine though, because I'd rather apply too many thin coats than one big thick coat. So yeah, it's fine. You can always add a second coat if you need to. Just work your way around on that helmet, and also don't forget to do the gloves as well. Just for speed and to be visually pleasing, I kept all the gloves the same. So next up is to get some hardened leather, the same colour we used on the overcoat of the US soldier, and this is going to be for like all the straps. So whether that's the straps on the jacket, straps on the gun. I'm quite messy. I've made it quite thin as well. That's purposeful because I want that to run into the cracks. That gives me a nice border, and then I can always do a second coat after, which will then I can be a little bit neater on. Now, one thing did happen when I was spraying these white. It was quite hydrophobic, as you can see here. Now, so no matter how much I applied that hardened leather, it kept wiping away. Top trick, either just run in with a brush a couple of times or just get some tissue paper, wipe it off, and then reapply it. Then it's a matter of picking out any guns or machine guns or gun metals. So again, it's that black and gunmetal mix for a slightly darker, well, gunmetal look. You just work your way around. Weirdly, metallics weren't that bad with that hydrophobic, but like I said, I'd solved it in the end anyway. So it wasn't too much of a biggie. It was just where I was doing those bolts. Then I did a couple of thin coats of black. Initially, I over-thinned this, and that's fine. You'll find that sometimes when you're painting, you over-thin it. But that didn't stress me or worry me because I knew I could just do a second coat straight after. And I had a bit more control over that as well because then I can like go, oh, depending on how thin I make it, I'll get a nice highlight. Then it's the same with doing the skin. Just work your way around. Paratrooper tan, again, thin down, getting some nice highlights from that. I can always do a second coat. However, the trousers could do with a little bit more love, and the gloves, so I just did a second coat on those. Just in places, not everywhere. Just where it was a little bit lighter there on the helmet. Then I'm just going to move on to picking out those quilted trousers with some rigor mortis. Again, you can work your way around picking out different colours here and there, like scarves, or like on the helmet, for instance, like if you want to do like a bit of a camo covering on top of the helmet. Again, I did a couple of coats here just to make sure it was a nice coverage. Then it's on to the camo pattern. Again, this is artistic license. This is using a little bit of reference, but because they're quite small, I'm just kind of blocking in the colours to where it kind of looks right and fitting. So using that olive green first, work my way round, and then move on to some brown as well. Now here I use bootstrap brown. You could use dark wood if you wanted to, whatever brown you've got. I just thought it was a bit better. Got a more solid coverage. Again, you can always tidy up if you're not happy with some of the results of the camo patterns, but from a distance it will look like that Fallschirmjager pattern. As I mentioned, I'm a messy painter, so once I've got all those initial colours on, it's just go around, tie it with some white. So where I've gone a bit wishy-washy or it's been a bit too runny with the straps and stuff like that, I can just tidy those up at this point. I think that's a key as well, is like not getting too worried about making mistakes because you can tidy up. And then it's an all-over coat of strong tone. Now initially you're like, but that's going all over that white you've just done, that's made it really dirty. Yes, you're right, but I'm just doing an all over coat first, and then I can get some water and thin that on the coat, so then it's a little bit more subtle. So just work your way around, add a little bit more water here, so then you get subtle dark shades in those folds in the cloth, but everywhere else is a bit darker. Again, same for the camo pattern and the quilted trousers. Just work your way around. Then if you want to, just do a little bit of a dry brush of Brigade Grey over the white. You can also do a little bit on the grey as well, like that bluey grey. I just kept it to the actual white jacket. Or you could just do it by hand and just go around with a little bit of white if you think that some of the white areas just need a little bit more love or a little bit more punch, because that wash will darken them down a bit. So you can just like the odd fold or cloth here and there, or where it might have pulled a bit as well. I'll just give it a little bit more punch in those areas. And then if you want to pick out any scarves, again, break up the colour a bit. Just gone for a nice ochre colour, so using that prairie ochre that we highlighted the US sky with. And then some highlights on the gloves and trousers if you want to. Rivets on the helmet. You can always do some chips in the helmet if you feel it's necessary, but yeah, just work your way around, picking out those highlights here and there. Again, this is just extra steps. You don't have to do this. You could just leave it as it was prior to this. This bit I just felt like the helmet could have done with a bit of a lighter tone, just to mimic that nice Luftwaffe blue. That's what I'm going to call it. Luftwaffe blue, Luftwaffe grey. It's probably got an actual official colour. I did thin a little bit of water on there just so it smoothed it out a bit so it wasn't too intense. That's something you can do. And then just tie it up with some Paratrooper tan, because that shade all over is obviously darkened down a bit. So just work your way around doing that. Picking out lips, extremities, nose, cheeks. Just do a highlight after if you want to, of amber skin. Then, of course, my favourite part again, which is to get brigade grey around and just make it look like clumped up bits of snow. I love this part. Such a fun, satisfying moment. And, you know, you can be quite messy here. Try not to splodge it too much, otherwise it just becomes quite white. So you do want to remove a fair bit. But again, it's paint. You can always paint over it if you do go in a bit too hard. Get some on the helmet so it looks like it's been snowing. You can always do some on the jacket as well. So instead of doing that dry brush, you can just sponge some brigade grey on instead. So there we are. The German Fallschirmjager are done. Again, really pleased with these. Loving adding that little sponging effect for the snow. You can mix and match where you apply the blues and like those weird quilted trousers and stuff, so you can do what you want. I just decided to do like a few with blue trousers, a few with those quilted like beigey kind of tones. You could do some jackets in camo if you wanted to, but they're in the winter campaign, so it might look a bit weird. But yeah, starting from a white undercoat, even with that weird sort of hydrophobic element to it. Not all sprays do that. I just had it with this one, and it was only on a handful of figures. It was temperamental, I think. This is the thing you'll find when you spray models. You do get elements which, one moment you're spraying 6, they're all fine, you paint them, mega. And then I did a bunch later on that saved them for the video, and then it just went weird. So maybe I didn't shake the can up enough or whatever, but sometimes that happens. Just wiping it off with your finger or just working straight back into it with a brush eventually removes it. So if you do find that happens with your stuff, just give it a bit of time. And I usually find, yeah, it does settle after a while. So, but a little bit annoying. I won't lie. It can be annoying. So enough of that. Let's get these guys into winter. Let's get them based. Normally when I base stuff, I base things so I can use them in a variety of theatres. So it tends to be like a generic muddy, earthy kind of colour with a brown rim, and then I can use them on whatever board I want to. Because I sponged on white on these, and I definitely want them to be in a winter campaign and they're dressed for it, it makes sense to do them on snow bases, and snow bases look cool. So I'm going to show you to do some snow bases with some little grass tufts covered in snow. Let's have some fun with snow. Now, before we begin applying any snow, the first thing I want to do is get some of that brigade grey and then base coat all my bases, certainly the ones that have been sprayed green. I need to do a couple of coats on that just to knock back that green, because that'll be a bit awkward when you're applying snow straight over. I don't tend to do any texture on my bases. I just apply snow straight on, but I want to make sure that the bases are tied up, the rims are painted, any splodges on the Germans are covered up as well. And then once you've done that, it's time to apply that snow. And again, just using this straight from the pot and applying that straight onto that base. So again, there's no sand or like mud under there. I just don't see the point if you just do an entire base of snow. It just seems counterproductive to do all that effort. If you're doing patches like it's thawed out, that makes sense. So get that all on, place it into places you want it to be, make it a bit thicker where they've been walking, and then it's a matter of getting some grass tufts. Once it's dry, apply those on. Don't do this when it's still wet. That would be a terrible idea. It won't stick anyway. I've used this beige grass colour from Game of Grass. I really like it. They've got really nice tiny tufts as well, which feel a little bit more realistic, not like come up to the knees like a lot of grass tufts do. And then, yep, once they're on, get some snow on top of the grass. You can really pile it on if you want to, so it looks like it's been a bit of a blizzard, or you've got some nice snow drifts there, but you know, you don't have to go too mad. Just give that sense of winter and snow. But yeah, really love the effect. And I quite like those beigey grass tufts. I thought they looked cool. So there we are, the snow bases are done. Really pleased with these. You can use what grass tufts you want. I went with those beige ones from Game of Grass. I just think it looks cooler and it looks dead because it's winter. But again, you can use what colours you want to. I'm not an expert on grass. So if you are an expert on grass and know the different colours of grass during different seasons, then by all means throw that into the comments and tell me why I'm wrong in doing beige. But I just thought it looked cool. I always go with the rule of cool and visual pleasing as opposed to sometimes what's historically correct. Like this outfit I'm wearing right now. It's from the 80s. It's not from World War II, believe it or not. My dad swapped it with a soldier when he was in the forces during the 80s. So yeah, I mean, it looks like it could be World War II, but those that know would know that it's not. And that's just a random interlude. Okay, so it's been a while since I painted World War II stuff, and honestly, this is not because Warlord have asked me to paint some stuff up. genuinely, I thoroughly enjoyed painting these. I think I enjoyed the Americans more than the Germans, and it's not because the Germans are any worse or anything like that from a painting point of view. It's just I love the look of the US stuff for those greatcoats. I don't know why. I think those greatcoats look mega. I think the different sort of headgears look cool. They've got quite caricature faces as well, like some with cigars in, which is a bit of fun. But from a visual point of view, I love them. And I enjoyed doing that little sponging effect with the snow. I know I've gone on about that, but I did. I really enjoyed doing it. And I was super pleased with that effect as well. I just looked at a screenshot of like, I'll pull it up, looked at a screenshot of some stuff. And I was like, how can I do that? How can I make that effect? Sponge, Peach. Of course it's sponge all the way. So I was super pleased with that. But from a unit building point of view, I love machine guns. I love submachine guns. I've always loved the MP40. I don't know why. It's my favourite looking gun. And it's the kind of gun I would give James Bond baddies like henchmen because it just looks like a cool SMG. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed painting these. And I'm kind of inspired to do a lot more. From doing this as well, as I was going through the process of painting stuff, doing the little bits of photography, because I really enjoyed doing that as well, doing my little setups. I will do a little video, I think, later on down the line of how I set up my photography, because it is quite, a lot of people have asked and it makes a lot of sense to show that. But with this particular stuff, I just used a pad of paper, it's an A3 pad of paper, white paper, as my base, scattered on some snow flock here and there, and then just had a couple of like trees, which were model railway trees, which are just sprayed white, so it looked like it was dusted with snow. And then, yeah, just stuck on my tanks, stuck on my troops. There's a really cool paint by MIG, which is white washable camo. So if you've got like vehicles that you want to like actually do the winter camo on, so it's like the whitewash paint, it's really good for that because you apply it and then it's washable. So you just get water and you apply that on. So I'll do a video on that later on down the line as well, because that was quite good fun because I washed away where the markings were on the tanks. But that's something for another video. It's more about the stuff in the box set here, which is the Americans and the Paratroopers. Well, the Americans and the Fallschirmjager, which is still Paratroopers, Peach. You said the same thing twice. I did. You're right. But yes, really enjoyed painting these. Had a lot of fun painting World War II stuff. It's been a while. I am now inspired to do more, so I'll probably get some of my Red Devils done. I'll get some of these Canadians done up here. I foresee more stuff. But yes, I will be doing, now that I've done this, a Battle Report or two. And it might just be recreating Banded Brothers. It might turn into, oh, this is an episode of Banded Brothers, Peach. This is cool. Why are they zombies? Why is there some weird mech Nazi? It's because we'd moved from Banded Brothers to Wolfenstein and you didn't even know that was going to happen. So that is some threads of thought that will happen down the line as well. Because who doesn't want to shoot Nazis in the face? So that's what I will do down the line, is do some horrific sort of weird science baddies. And like, yeah, I might even try and get a little Captain America painted. That'll be good fun. So many thoughts. And the Howling Commandos. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've got plenty of ideas now of stuff to do. But yeah, I really enjoyed painting these. They're great, really nice models, really go super well together, really well designed as well, and got a good aesthetic, nice proportions, and probably as a cheat for painting, models with overcoats, always a big win. So if you're doing like Napoleonics and you've got French and Russians and they've got overcoats on, super win. You don't have to do all that, the extra bits. It's the same with like, you know, World War II stuff or any kind of stuff. So yes, if you want to get your Americans painted real fast, get this set. And the Germans are great fun to paint as well. Spraying white, pretty much done, aren't you? So yes, thank you very much for watching this. As always, a massive thank you to these folks coming by. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't dress up like this. Like some fake looking American war correspondent who doesn't know what the hell's going off in his little man cave full of like random bits of like ammo case and stuff like that. Yeah, just some random bits that you accrue over the years. At some point I'd like to get some decommissioned hardware, weaponry from World War II, maybe a Sten, maybe an MP40, definitely a Bren. I love the look of a Bren. I mean, one day I'll aspire to the Perrys and get myself a Bren carrier and, you know, drive around in that. Always wanted a Willys Jeep as well. That was one thing when I was a kid. Always wanted to have a Willys Jeep because they just look cool. So yeah, I mean, anyone out there who just wants to donate me a Willys Jeep, by all means. I'll get like a little tiny 1/72 scale one in the post. Thank you. Also, yes, painting vehicles, that should be a video coming soon as well, I reckon, because there's some interesting things. I'm not a military modeler, so there are better channels that will cover like all the weather inside of it, but like speed painting and getting things on the tabletop quickly and efficiently, that feels like a good video down the line as well. So stay tuned for that. But yes, until the next time, and all my waffling's over. Nuts. That's all I've got. Nuts. That's how we deal with letters of surrender in the US Army and airborne. We just respond with nuts. Not cashew nuts or, you know, like Brazil nuts, just the word. Anyway, yeah, I should probably sign off. Love you all. Bye.